something that I value so much, is that I don't have to. I find when I get material from you, or when I get material back, whichever way that we're working, that
Hmm.
um, your sense of dialogue and of action and all, it always punches, like the beats hit really, really well. You know how to engage the reader. So I find what I really enjoy, because we have different personalities,
Yeah,
what's
yeah.
great is that, I maybe look at a character's emotional issues, or struggle issues a little bit
Hmm.
differently, but because you have that ability to kind of empathetically kind of read into the character. It's a really great dialogue about crafting story arc, and how the character moves, and there's a kind of a level of trust already established, because I know that what you put on the page, I mean, from page one, is going to sing, so that's a huge help when I can look at something right away and go, this guy knows how to write, he knows how to communicate concisely, because I suck at being concise.
It's
And
difficult. It's really, really hard.
yeah, but I mean, I just anecdotally, I'll put something where there's a concept that a character is trying to get across in a scene to another character, and it's like 10 lines long, because I'm digging into whatever philosophically is going on there, and then I'll
Yeah.
put it back over to you, and it'll come back as 2 lines, and it'll sound 10 times better.
That's
So,
only because you've never seen my first drafts.
right, right.
You never show those. Um, what's really lovely about working with an actor is, and people fear working with actors, and I think writers should befriend actors and directors, definitely actors first, because I'm always thinking about the big picture, so the overall schema or structure or scaffolding on a story. So I'm always tracking all the beats and the through lines in the story and the sequences and the acts and everything else. I'm always keeping an eye on that to make sure that everything flows and has a pace, and it dramatically kind of escalates as we go along. But all of this is populated by people, you, the actor, the character, right? And you constantly come in and you're going, this doesn't feel right as a beat. You're not saying the character shit. You're just saying that in that moment something's not quite right. And I'll constantly be saying, but Sebastian, don't forget that in the third beat, when we revisit this idea, this
Mm,
is going to happen and this is going to happen. So we have to be as far away from that conclusion as possible at the beginning. We have to stretch that as much as possible, and sometimes you'll concede, or sometimes you'll say doesn't feel right. And this is good for me because I get to go away and God say maybe I didn't get it right, and I need to redraft at least that beat of it. But that's an intelligent conversation. It's not about wallpaper. It's about something really specific that actually is going to have a huge impact on everything. And I love those conversations because they make me go back to basics and say, what is Sebastian seeing or feeling that I'm not seeing that clearly is important to that person.
yeah,
So I've got to figure this out.
yeah.
It's
Well,
fun.
because
It's a lot of fun.
it is, because I can't remember what it was now, but I remember having a little bit of a conversation about something that you had written, and there was it was a sequence of scenes, or it was maybe a completed script, but it had a very much kind of almost like a transporter feel. This guy was like a really cool character under pressure, lots of action, scenes were moving, and everything that came out of this guy's mouth was cool. It just, he sounded cool, he moved cool, and the person he was interacting with, it was all cool. The cool factor was super hot. That I remember, though, getting into conversations with you about looking at moments where there's sort of character vulnerability maybe
Yeah.
has to come into play, so that we could you could change the cycle of highs and lows a little bit, or what have you. But that's what's part of interest. Like, I think that's kind of what you're talking about, that kind of,
Yeah. Yeah.
you've got the cool factor in there, and then someone else is coming in and looking at it from a more of an esoteric kind of emotional self-reflective perspective. And but
Which
that teamwork is amazing, I find.
which is really, really, it's really, this industry is really bizarre, right? Because you're having a creative endeavor that meets an industrial endeavor, right? And then you have to match the two together for it to work. So for instance, on set, the industrial endeavor has to be in place for you to then create this emotional space that's going to take 12 hours to shoot.
Yeah.
And then you go home and you're exhausted, right? And you're having to merge the two together. And it's a little bit like a cinematographer and a director. They're having to share the camera together. So cinematographer has all this technical expertise and this incredible eye, but they're sharing this space together. The director's going, I think we should frame it this way. We should move this way with the actors and everything else. And if you're collaborating with an actor on, that's exactly what we're doing. So we're sharing the page together. It's not precious to me. In fact, my entire job is an ideas factory. Is I have to produce idea over idea over idea. So we might have a log line and a concept that we both think, holy cow, this is amazing, right? And I'll constantly be going, yeah, but is it the best execution of that idea? And sometimes that makes people really, really panic. We'll either explore this idea and make it blossom, or we'll just move in a completely different direction because people tend to settle. And I'm being reductive by saying this, but they settle on the first idea and then they get scared because they don't want to change it. Whereas I'm thinking, this is a good idea. Can we add 3 more to it? And then you've got a really solid concept that's going to travel. And then let's go with that. But that process is having to let go. And it's this weird equilibrium of being incredibly precious about everything, thinking everything through to an nth degree, and at the same time going, meh, toss it. It'll be fine. we'll do something else. It'll be absolutely fine. And it's your process similar to that when you're shooting, where you have to be hyper prepared. You know the script, but you know at any given moment you might have to toss all of that and do something else.
Right.
Is that kind of similar to you when you're on set? It must be.
Yeah, I definitely found that. I think, we've even had, I think, those conversations where we're talking about trying to develop an idea, where there's a scenario. The general statement might be one man against the world or whatever it happens to be, but the way I'm thinking of that, it maybe meets a formula that doesn't have enough sort of creative twist to it to make it an
Yeah.
old idea with a new twist. So I'll
Yeah.
bring it over to you and you'll spin that around somehow, and your idea is completely different in the end. But what I find makes it work, and I think I'm alluding to what you're talking about here, is that as long as I'm not too married to that idea and I'm willing to kind of toss it even for a moment to kind of really look at the
Yeah.
quality of the idea
Yeah.
you're talking about, we either, that shift can happen, or you find something in the middle. I think where people get too kind of stuck in the ground on their idea and they're pushing something, it gets much more difficult to kind of cultivate a kind of working relationship.
I think especially at the beginning of an idea, when all of it's nascent, you have a sense or a feel that you want your idea to kind of look like this or feel this way. Um, it's you can't be too precious. So many times I've seen people burn with projects because they would say nothing about this can change, and they would defend everything about it, and it wasn't necessarily the best execution of that idea, by the way, or needed a bit more work or reframing or something like that, and they would say no to everything, and then 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, you say, how are you getting on with your project? I'm still holding on to draft one, and it's going, shit, we've sent so many producers your way. You had an opportunity to, you would have made your movie already. It would have been in the can, then release, and you're still holding on to draft one, which is not perfect, by the way. So please let go. So again, it's the ability to have loads of ideas and to be able to kind of produce them on demand and to be able to execute them. And that's the thing, though. Everybody's got ideas. Executing them, though, is really, really hard. It takes a lot of time and craft, a lot of tears. Oh, fuck yeah, very
Yeah.
much so.
And so do you
But
think,
but also, at what point do you defend a project and say, actually, no, I'm this is the hill I'm dying on, and you just kind of push it through? Because sometimes you have to do exactly that, because then it becomes a weird Frankenstein, and you're going, I don't understand this. Or do you look at your career and say, this is my first movie ever? Um, yes, I'm not going to die for this one. I know that they're going to corrupt it and it's going to become shit, possibly, but I'm getting paid and my name's out there, and that's going to open up film number 2, number 3. Um, and it's possible that they might do the same thing on film number 2, number 3. But on film number 4, I get to control it. And so whatever precious baby I've got, keep it for down the line. Because it will come your turn. Well, they'll say, here's 5 million or 10 million to go and do a movie, and say, yeah, I'm going to direct this one. If you've got the skill set, by the way, I don't think it's a great idea if you've locked yourself in a room for 20 years as a screenwriter and have not studied anything about directing and have not gone out to execute that, to suddenly say, I want to be attached to this, otherwise no deal, because you fucked it again in a different way. Sorry about the language.
It's okay. Um, I agree. I mean, I think sometimes I wonder, and I'm curious if you feel the same way, that a lot of people who set themselves up as screenwriters really should be novel writers, because at least to that
Ooh.
extent, you do have to negotiate with editing, but you can put your idea on page, and you're not because you're not
You know
trying to
what?
put so many pieces together. You know?
I think they would burn there also because the
Yeah,
industry has moved quite a lot that it's very difficult to tell a screenplay and a novel apart now. In terms of structure, they're all using the third act structure. They're using sequencing. So if you look at somebody like Dan Brown, for instance, he'll sequence a story in 20 chapters of about 5 chapters each, or 20 sequences. That gives you 100 chapters. It gives you, a 90,000 kind of page novel. Um, so I look at that and I look at a screenplay and I go, they're not really different. They're just executed slightly differently on the page. But in terms of pace, in terms of drama, in terms of attention tools and high stakes and stuff like that, it's identical. So nah, they wouldn't survive in that world because things have moved on quite a lot. People expect movies on the page now when they're reading a novel.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I mean, it's just such a collaborative process.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you're too stuck on keeping things your own way, you're either barking up the wrong tree, or you better have a ton of money.
Yep. And be able to absorb the hit.